Hi, this is Kate Elliott, and we are here for the final episode of season 4 of Narrative Worlds, in which I chat with a fantastic guest about some aspect of writing craft, writing career, writing process, or whatever we want to talk about. And today, I'm delighted to have John Scalzi, who was actually supposed to be here in November, but something intervened, and a medical emergency, which is all fine, of mine intervened. So he has graciously agreed to arrive today, to come back, reschedule today, on the topic being online, negotiating the changing terrain of social media in the 21st century, or as we may also say, the hellscape of now. Hello, John.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
So John probably doesn't need that much introduction for many of you, but I'm going to do it anyway. And excuse me, I'm now going to read from this. John has worked as a film critic, a columnist, a writer, an editor, a novelist, and worked with Hollywood and on video games. He is a New York Times bestseller. His awards include the Hugo, the Locust, the Audi, the Kurd Sorry.
Lasnitz.
Thank you. The Robert A. Heinlein and the Seyun. And these two I didn't know about: the 2016 Governor's Award for the Arts in Ohio. And this one sounds so cool: the 2023 Budapest Grand Prize.
That's right.
Ah,
Yes,
I
indeed.
love it. I love it. Congratulations.
Thank
Is
you.
there anything you want to add to that, John?
No, except that I literally just before we started chatting, sent the manuscript on my latest novel off to my editor. So just
Congratulations.
literally just finished it, wrote the afterwards and sent it off. It's called When the Moon Hits Your Eye, and it'll be out in March 25th of 2025.
Congratulations, because that's
Thank
all,
you.
it doesn't matter how many, right? That
No,
moment is like every time. And also you must be like riding this high right now.
I kind of am. It's like this novel was fighting me, right? It was just
Oh yeah.
it's a difficult it was a difficult novel, not because I mean for lots of reasons, but it was just sort of like it's like, oh no, I will win this, and it had to be done this weekend because I'm going to Iceland on Wednesday, which
You're going
sounds
where? Iceland?
Iceland, right?
Oh God, that's going to be great.
Right, which sounds just like, well, I have to do this. I have to finish it because I have to go to Iceland. But I did, and I had,
Oh, yeah.
so being able to finish it was kind of a good thing. And then so yeah, now I don't have anything to do for like 3 whole days. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
Well, you and I are going to talk for a while about being online, because we're
Yeah,
online, being online. And boy, the landscape of online is so different now than it was back then, not to mention the fact that when I started in this field, I wasn't online at
sure.
all.
Right,
Um, I didn't get online until 1990
right.
on the late lamented Genie bulletin board. And what was the other one called? The
There's
CompuServe one.
CompuServe. Yeah, there was
Yeah,
CompuServe. There was Prodigy. There was Delphi, and there was Genie. Those were the kind of big four. And then America Online came and ate all of their lunch.
that's right. And so I thought it might be worth starting in this age of easy social media, where people can't even imagine not being online. Younger
Mhm.
people can't, it's such a part of their lives, to
Sure.
maybe talk about how different the landscape was and how the landscape has changed. Because when did you get online?
I got online permanently on a permanent basis in about 1993 or 94,
Mhm.
right around the same time that the Mosaic web browser, which would
Oh,
eventually become Netscape,
oh,
but basically the instant that that went,
yeah.
live, I managed to navigate myself to, a Gopher hole to download it and popped it up. And this is a true story. My wife, Christine, who was my girlfriend at the time, was living with me. She went to go visit her parents, and she left me on like a Friday night, and I had just installed the internet on my computer. And she's like, okay, well, I'll see you. And I was like, all right, I'm going to play with the internet. And I literally, as she walked out the door, I pressed like the random button because there used to be a random button on the internet. And then when she came back 3 days later, I was still there and I hadn't gone to sleep. And I think I'd literally seen all of the internet at that point.
Yes, because you could see all of the internet
Right.
in 3 days. I mean, I watched I getting online with bulletin boards, which were their whole own thing and weren't the World Wide Web.
Right. Yeah.
And I watched web pages appear in the world. I watched the knowledge of the world slowly crawl onto the internet. So finally you could get that map, the 1780 map of France made by those cartographers.
Yeah.
I used that as a reference
Oh, yeah.
30 years later because it was all online. And back then, if you didn't have access to a library, you couldn't get all those things.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. It was fascinating. I mean, like I said, it was at one point it was super compact, and then just of course it exponentially grew. But it was funny to me just how well it sort of suited my own sort of temperament because I was working at a newspaper and I was writing a column anyway. So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it and the web 1.0, it was you have text, let us see all of your text. So I just kind of popped in on it. I got my own website in 1994. I hand rolled my own HTML, did all that sort of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had taken pictures of it because it was so very web 1.0 with the tile
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds and
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, to go from that where you're literally writing in Unix to actually upload your files to what we have now, where everything is just literally all you have to do is type and post or do a video
Yeah.
and everything is handled. I think we want to be careful. We don't want to valorize the good old days because
Right.
there were crappy parts of the internet even back in 1993. But yeah, no, it was certainly a very different time. There was a lot of effort that had to be made, and the accessibility was had a high enough bar that really you really wanted to have to leap it in order to be able to do it.
Yeah. I think that our discussion can include ways it began to change through, but I want to come back to that thing you did, which was to create your own site. Because if
Mhm.
there is one thing that I think it's important for people to think about being online is
Yeah.
to, I hate to use terms of property, but we live in a capitalist world. So I'm just
Yeah.
going to own your own space. It's
Yes.
fine to be on these other spaces. I use them all the time because they're easier for me.
Sure.
But it's really you have had a, I will say, peculiarly um, consistent
Yes.
use of saying this is my space and I'm not farming it out. I'm not using other people's property. It's
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
And I think that that's I I I've had a web page for a long time, but I keep switching places, right?
Sure. Sure.
So yeah, and I couldn't do the programming to create my own. So I always
Right.
had to use other people's programming. So I think that I want to talk, can you talk a little bit about that, the
Sure.
importance of that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it is absolutely important that you have your own space. I mean, I'll put it this way. I mean, I've had a website, one form or another, since 1993. Scalzi.com, which is my branded website. I've owned that domain name since 1998. It went online in March of 1998, and then whatever, which is my more or less daily blog, has been there since September 13th, 1998. And in that time, from 1998 to May 18th,
That's the
2024,
19th. It's the 19th.
it's the 19th, excuse me. Well, my brain's kind of fuzzy. I wrote a book.
Okay, you
Uh,
wrote a book.
uh, here are the things that rose and fell. AOL, ICQ, CompuServe, Genie, Angel,
MySpace,
MySpace,
MySpace.
MySpace, Angel Fire, what is it? Um, all of these places that were the most popular things of their time. I used to tell people AOL, it was the MySpace of the 1900s, or and then
The
I had
1900s.
and then I had to update that when MySpace fell. And so now you have, you had Twitter, you have Facebook, now you have Threads and Blue Sky and TikTok, of course, which is the monster at the moment for as long as it remains legal in the United States, which
Exactly.
is a whole other thing that we don't need to talk about. But the thing about it is, all of these things rise and fall in sort of a natural pattern. Things get popular because they're easy and all your friends are there, but eventually something happens to it. Usually they just try to stuff it so full of ads that you can't actually see what you came there for anymore. Something else pops up, everybody goes there. Meanwhile, my website has just been chugging along for 25 years. And that is where I write every day, where I have, where I principally do my announcements, where I put up the big ideas to support other authors, and so on and so forth. Now, does that mean that it is always my primary place? No. As you mentioned, using the former Twitter, now currently I use Blue Sky a lot, is so much easier just to communicate and talk with people. But my site has 25 years of me on it, and literally nobody else owns that. I mean, I rent my space from an ISP, but at the end of the day, if I really needed to, I could do that all myself. So what it means is, regardless of what happens, if a billionaire comes and buys the social media site that you use and turns it into a right-wing hate site, just theoretically, not that that would ever happen,
Never.
never, then you have someplace else to be and to go where people can always find you. You type Scalzi into Google, it will take you to my website first because it's got 25 years of search history. No matter what happens anywhere else, you can always find me in that one place. And that is extremely important for writers, for artists, for creators, anybody who is basically in the stream of commerce with their creative work, to be in a place where everybody can find you, regardless of what happens to any one instance of social media, has been an extreme boon, particularly for me. It's never been difficult to find me. And that has had a real important impact in my career. I owe so much of my career, including my very first novel being published, to the fact that I have my own personal website.
So I bought, rented, whatever, KateElliott.com a long, long time ago. And I've never been able to maintain a blog on a regular basis for
Sure.
whatever reason. In large part, I think because when I started and I first had it, I still had 3 kids at home, and their dad was often gone. So I was kind of a single parent a lot, and I just
Sure.
didn't have the energy, and I wanted to put that energy into writing, which was fine. But the reality is that even though I don't have a lot of traffic and my visibility isn't the same as yours at the level of yours, the
Sure.
thing is, people still find me every week, maybe a dozen,
Yeah.
right? Because they can go to kateelliott.com and
Yep.
see my bibliography
Mm-hmm.
and my very inactive blog,
Yeah.
and see a link to my Patreon, which is more active,
Sure.
primarily because I feel so much guilt that people are so kindly and generously giving me money every
Sure.
month that I feel obliged to write something for them in
Yeah.
a way that I didn't if it was just my blog.
Yeah.
And I want to say something else to people who may feel daunted by the idea of having their own site. Your own site can be your bibliography.
Yeah.
You can have a space for news, but if you're not able, you don't have to have a site where you are chatty and posting every day if you can't do it.
Yeah.
What it is it's a place where people can find, this is where you are. Here's how I can contact you. This is what you have available. That's
Right.
it. If that's
No,
what you can manage, you can do that.
Yeah. And I think that that's a very good point. I mean, in many ways, I'm a bad example to people because I literally do update pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And that's just
You're a
log
bad example, John.
bad example. That's just me being like, I have
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I will get mentally blocked up if I don't write every day. But no, but the point is, your point is very good. It is not about the frequency. It's not a race. It's not a competition to have the best website, right? It is the point of when someone puts your name in a search engine, what pops up. And if you have a website and it's been maintained, not updated every day, it doesn't have to be updated every day, but it's been maintained and it's been there, they will find that because that is your home. And as you say, if you have a bibliography, if you have pointers to where people can buy your stuff, if you occasionally update, it's fine. I think a lot of people think about the building of the community thing, which is certainly a thing we can talk about, and certainly is a good thing. But there is also just flat out discovery. There will be people
yeah,
who will read a Kate Elliott book and be, I really like this book. I want to find out more. Go to the website specifically just to learn
yeah,
more about you. And if there's, some material there, then that's going to be a connection that they otherwise would not have made. It doesn't matter whether you update all the time, just that you have some stuff there and that it is reasonably maintained. And if you haven't updated since 2005, maybe update, but maybe updating once every couple of months if you have something new and
yeah.
interesting put is going to be fine.
Yeah, I think that when people think that they can build their influencer status on TikTok or Instagram, which was the previous one, and Instagram
Sure.
is now unusable. It's not unusable, but it's terrible because of the advertising now.
Sure, sure.
Or Twitter, right? Oh, but I have so many people, followers on Twitter. Well, so what?
Yeah,
It's out of your control. Yeah, and that's why in terms of personal discoverability and having a personal base, it's like your base of operations, and then you can
yes,
branch out.
yes,
But you said you wanted to talk a little bit about building community,
sure.
because there's a couple ways that can go. One is building community for yourself, for your
Mhm.
for your career, but then
Sure.
the other is building community just in the larger sense,
Yeah.
which is something that to me, social media can do really well
Mhm.
if you think of it as something that's adjacent to, but not the same as building career visibility.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I loved about Twitter before it was bought by Elon Musk.
Mhm.
Um, that I thought was so great about Twitter because it seemed to offer both things. But can you talk some more about that, both maybe retrospectively, but also kind of
Sure.
moving into because it feels to me like post pandemic so much has shifted in the landscape, and
Yeah.
I feel like things that were possible 5 years ago feel like they're much more constrained now. I
Sure.
feel like it's that famous Cory Doctorow phrase, the enshittification of everything, right?
Sure. Sure.
And I feel that to some extent is going on, but anyway,
Yeah.
talk about building community.
Well, one of the things that I think has always happened basically as long as we've had the internet and the ability to post stuff, right? People have been very concerned about, well, how do I build community and how do I do this? Do I need to have that community? What does it all mean? And I think that there is some, um, I don't want to say almost a mania about it, but this real concern that if you don't have the community and you don't do all this and you don't do that, then you're going to be at a disadvantage and so on and so forth. And so the first thing I want to tell people is there is more than one way to get your name out there. If you're not good at social media, don't freak out about the fact that you're not good at
Yes.
social media. It is just
Yes, I crucially want to agree with this. Go on.
but yeah, because I mean, like I said, social media works really well for me because I am a performative introvert, which means that, people enervate me if I spend too much time. But if I can have them in controlled doses through a computer,
Mhm,
that's perfect.
mhm,
And I have some ability to be witty and Also, with the passage of time, I have learned that being clever does not necessarily mean that you've said something smart. So now I kind of have a better grip on that. So it's been something
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
always kind of worked for me. But there's two things about it. One thing I think that writers do is they're like, I've got to be online and I've got to tell people about my work and I got to do this and I really have to market myself. And if I don't, then people will never know about my work and I'll be, and I'll be dead. And the thing is if you really want to talk about your work, absolutely you can do that. But then there's the other thing, as you say, the career adjacent stuff where it is, I'm here online because my friends are here online and because I, like most writers, live in a hole most of the time, and my
Yeah.
friends are spread out around the United States and the world. And this is a place where I get to see them
Yep.
and have fun with
Yep.
them. And then other people, it's like having the convention online where other people can see you having the discussion. They're kind of at the periphery of it, but they get to see it and be involved. And that sort of community building where you're just literally, I'm not here promoting a work, I'm not here promoting my career. I'm just literally here talking with friends and occasionally discussing craft and occasionally discussing the latest Scooby-Doo movie, or something like that. In many
Hmm.
ways is more valuable, not because you're going to sell a book out of it. And I think this is really important. It's like
Yeah.
I had on Twitter a peak of about 210,000 followers, right? Every time a book came out, and I could quantify this, the amount of people that would click on a button where I was like, you can buy this here was less than 1%. The CRM on social media is actually fairly low. It is not to say that it doesn't work. But the call to action is so much harder to craft than people think it is. On the other hand, if you are someone who, when they go online, they see you and they see you chatting and doing all that sort of stuff,
Yep.
then you kind of remain on top of mind. You are a character in their life, so that when you say, hey, the new book is coming out, or hey, I just, sent the book off and all that sort of stuff, then that's part of the flow of their life. And they may not push a button immediately to go get the book, but they know it's there. They know you are an active part of the writer community and all of that sort of stuff. And the long-term benefit of that top of mind status is something that is not immediately quantifiable, but is absolutely beneficial.
Well, it's because if they go into a bookstore, when people go into bookstores now, or if they see your book on an online place, or they just see it in the library, they might go, oh yeah, yeah, they chatted with me.
Yeah.
Oh, let me check it out.
And that is the thing that, like, for example, I will also say this. I see, again, in the quantifiables, I see much more of a call to action when I promote other writers
Yes. Yeah.
than when I talk
Yeah.
about my own writing. And in that sort of sense, when we talk about influencing and doing all of that sort of stuff, that's the beneficial side, because again, they see the community. And what that turns into is the dynamic of me saying Mary Robinette Cole's new book is amazing, or whomever. Or like when you get nominated for an award or something, like you're saying,
Yeah.
here's who else is nominated. We go check out those books. Those are amazing. That what that is the sort of psychological equivalent of hand selling a friend a book. Like, what are you reading? Let me
Yeah.
tell you about what I'm reading.
Yeah.
And so that is a benefit. Again, does it benefit you immediately? No, but your reputation as a fair dealer, of a person who is community oriented, who supports other writers instead of trying to tear them down, all of that sort of stuff has, again, knockoff effects. And again, the community that you build by that sort of supportive engagement is better than, say, the community that you might build if you were a bitter, sarcastic burnout who hates everybody else, right? Because
Yeah.
those people get views and they get clicks and they get people, but that sort of reputation eventually has a detrimental effect in the long run.
in
And
the
that's
long
my
run.
experience as well.
I want to circle back kind of in a related way, because
Sure.
we talk about, some people worry about, what am I supposed to do online? How am I supposed to present myself online? And
Yeah.
you and I have been through this whole, 30 years of changes. And I remember back in the day when it was like, well, you've got to go bring cookies to the truck drivers at the distribution centers who are filling the racks at the
Right.
supermarkets. And so a lot of people aren't even going to understand that sentence,
Right.
right? So that they'll put your paperback in the front in the supermarket
Yeah.
turntable rack, right?
Yep.
And then it's like, well, you've got to make the bookmarks with your book on it. And people were like, mid-listers like me are always like, oh, what's the magic bullet that's going to make it happen? And
Right.
um, and I've been on, I was on Genie, and then on oh my God, the other one. I can't even remember the names
CompuServe?
of all these places. No, 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 no. I was never on CompuServe
Yeah.
or Prodigy. The one that followed it that became the SFWA forums eventually. Never mind.
SFFnet.
Yeah, SFFnet. Right.
Yeah.
For a long time, my email was SFFnet until they finally, like, it died
Yeah.
forever. That was sad because it was cool to be Kate Elliott at SFFnet. But
SFFnet.
anyway, I'm not anymore. It's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone, right? It's
Yeah.
gone.
Yes.
So it would have been better to be Kate Elliott at kateelliott.com.
Yes.
Which I never did. Anyway, but for me, Twitter was the one that made me really understand and think a lot more about persona.
Yeah.
Like you, I'm an introvert.
Mhm.
I have done theater and I'm good at it. And to me, like going on panels at a convention, to me, that's theater.
Yeah.
I'm appearing at the convention, not as me, but
Mhm.
as Kate Elliott, the author,
Yeah.
right? Not as mom to my 3 kids, but as Kate Elliott, the author. So who is Kate Elliott, the author? I
Right.
mean, she's whoever I want her to be. And she's me, but she's a sliver of me and the
Yeah.
way that I want to present her. And Twitter really taught me. There are people who get online on social media and they just tell you everything about
Mhm.
their lives.
Yep.
And you know what? If that's what they're comfortable doing, I literally don't mean this as a criticism.
Mhm.
That provides some kind of catharsis, or it's something that they want to do. For
Right.
me, as an introvert who's very reserved,
Yeah. Yeah.
I have that opportunity to, like you, communicate in text
Mhm.
with all these people I know, from all over the world now,
Yeah.
in a way that I couldn't have communicated before. It's like this moving bar, right? Or the water cooler.
Yeah.
And over time, I began to think about, how do I want to be, not only how do I want to be seen, but what do I want to get out of this?
Right.
Am I just here to sell my books? Because if you're just there to sell your books, that's never, no, I'm there to build community.
Yeah.
And how do I want to build community? What is the way? And Twitter, for example, because you are correct about that 1% click-through rate.
Sure.
What happens is that building community creates this larger group of people who know you and then who think favorably about you in the same way you would be in any community.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to be the snarky person, like you said, who sits in the corner and everyone goes, oh, I hope he doesn't say something snarky and mean about
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be the person who people want to go sit down with, in the couches and chat for a little
Right.
bit? Do you want to be the supportive person who helps newcomers feel comfortable?
Right.
And we all have that option to think about our persona. We don't have to be an influencer.
Yeah.
I'm not on TikTok because I don't watch TikTok. I don't, TikTok to me is stressful.
Yeah.
So I don't try to go on there. Everyone, and because, like you, I know that TikTok will reach its, will be replaced by something else.
Sure. Sure.
So you don't have to be a certain kind of persona. The key to
Mhm.
me is you need to find the persona you are comfortable with being on social media.
Right. So here's the thing, and this is the thing that I've always told people. The John Scalzi that you see on my blog or on social media like Twitter and now on Blue Sky is me. It is me. It is absolutely who I am. But the levels have been tweaked, right?
Yes, I like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what it is. The me that you see online is probably a little bit wittier than the real me, because I get to have time to craft what it is that I have to say. Is possibly a little more activist than me during the day, or something like that, because it's easy to
Mm-hmm.
go in and say something, put in a punchy blog post, or two lines on Threads or Mastodon about politics or something like that, and get in and get out. Is a person who does a lot of back and forth, in a way that the real me would be like, after 5 minutes, it's like, okay, I've got to leave now because I'm going to set all of you on fire. It
Yeah. Yeah.
is that person. And so I said, it's not that it's a fake person. I'm not being like fake Scalzi, real Scalzi, fake Scalzi, because
Yeah.
they're all me. But it is absolutely a mediated version of me. I
Yeah.
made the choices to be that. And that is a choice that still evolves. And I will give you an example of that. Um, who I am, or who I was on the former Twitter, because I left there in November, and who I am on Blue Sky, which is now my current sort of main social media hangout. I'm there. I'm on Threads. I'm on Mastodon, but Blue Sky is basically where I go to hang out. Right? Um, they're very different, right? Because when I switched over from Twitter to Blue Sky, I took that as an opportunity to say, okay, I'm no longer going to do the just absolutely, vicious punch back when someone says something shitty about me, right? I'm instead just going to, almost always ignore it. When people come into my comments to like pick a fight with me, it's like, I hear you're the fastest shot in the West and I'm
Yeah.
here to bring you down. Instead of engaging with them, or even just condescending to them before I block them, I just block them immediately. Um, because as I've gotten older, I just turned 55. As I've gotten older, I realized that the returns
Yeah.
psychically for me were very
Yeah.
low.
Yeah.
And the sort of engagement that I got out of that, where people were like, "Yeah, go get them," were not beneficial to me or to the other people that I was working with. So the John Scalzi on Blue Sky is a much nicer person, is a much more considered person than the John Scalzi who was on Twitter. And again, they're not false pictures of me. But the Twitter one was what that was the medium, that was the place, and that was the medium, and that seemed to work there. But eventually stopped working. So when I moved somewhere else, I took the opportunity to sort of revise that. And that Blue Sky Scalzi is also mostly the one that's on Threads, and mostly the one that's on Mastodon, and even the one that's on the blog now. I have the legend on whatever was taunting the tauntable since 1998. I do very little taunting anymore, because at this point in my life, it's tiresome. It's also who I am in the community. It's almost always punching down. I mean, unless I'm going to pick a fight with Neil Gaiman, there's not much of a benefit to me,
Yeah.
talking crap about people.
So
And that's really important.
20-year-old me is like, pick a fight. And then old me is like, nah.
Yeah, that's
Right?
exactly right.
The older I get, the more it's nah. That
Yeah,
one of the other things I want to talk about is coming, I came into the convention scene as a young woman in the oh man, end of the 80s and then in the 90s mostly.
yeah.
And I was not hip, not cool. And there was a lot of hierarchy, personal hierarchy. I mean, it's
Sure.
still present, of course, because we're hierarchical band animals.
Yes.
Um, but one of the things that social media allowed me to do was to think about, it gave me a chance, a real chance to not just in person, but online, reaching larger people, to think about how I felt when I entered the field, not knowing people, and to say, hey, you know what? I can be welcoming. I can find someone who follows me, and I tend not to comment on people if they don't follow me,
Yeah.
who said, "Oh, I just sold my first short story." I can say, "Oh, great, congrats," because I
Yeah.
think if they're following me, it might matter to them that I said it for
Yeah.
whatever. It's odd for me to think of myself in that way,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
but
it's
you
like
know,
welcome to micro celebrity. That's just,
yeah, micro celebrity, but yeah, but it's true, right?
yeah,
In its own small way, and it just gives me an opportunity to to pay forward something that I didn't really get when I was young. So it
right.
allows me to adapt that, and so we can use social media in
Yeah,
positive ways. And I will always come back to the idea that what social media is best at is building community.
hmm,
But I want to circle back to something that you also said. Now, not everybody is going to have the same experience on it. And some people will experience more abuse,
yeah,
and they'll experience abuse in a way that is harder for them to push back at.
sure.
And I think that's important to acknowledge. I have a pretty low profile, so I have gotten, frankly, very little
Yeah,
direct abuse. I just think I'm mostly perceived as not important enough. Plus, I'm white and I'm older,
yeah,
and I've been around a long time, and who
yeah,
is she anyway, whatever, right? I'm not controversial in any way. But other people, I see what many Black women go through.
yeah,
It is not, it's things that I might think are easy or not an issue, are not going to be easy and not an issue for people who have more vulnerable and marginalized
right.
identities. To
Well, and
use
I think,
that. Yeah.
yeah, no, I think you've made a very very cogent point. One of the things that I really always impress on people is, even in the early days, coming into the community, coming into social media, um, bluntly, uh, cis straight white dude, right? It did matter then. It matters now. It matters now more because we actually have a political movement, not only in the United States, but kind of worldwide, that has really
Yeah.
decided that the right thing to do these days is to punch down on minorities, and literally punch in a lot of in a lot of ways, in a lot of times. And so um it took me, because straight white dude, oblivious, it took me a long time to realize that my experience of being online, where even when people come at me, and they do come at me, it's always from downhill, right? Because what are they going to do to me? My first novel was a hit, right? So I immediately was up here. And it's sort of, and I've been very fortunate that I've kind of continued to my upward sort of drift. And so when people come for me, what they're
John,
hoping,
keep talking. I'm going to close the sliding glass door. Hold
okay,
on. Keep
uh,
talking.
yeah, and so when they come for me, it's a very different dynamic for me than it is for a Black woman, or for someone who is queer, or someone who is trans. Um, and there's not as much value in coming after me, as opposed to ganging up on someone else. And so we do have to be cognizant about that. And I think one of the things that for example, can come back over to this, one of the things that I've liked about the current ethos of don't engage, just block, is immediately, it shuts them down. But the problem with that is that only goes so far. If people are persistent, they can continue to do that, and it is a problem with no immediate good answer. The thing that is happening, and I think we need to be clear about what it is there are certain people who want to restrict the benefits of social media to particular people, and
Yes.
to
Yes.
deprive other groups of those benefits. Um, as someone who regularly receives the benefits of it, one of the things that I do think is incumbent upon me and other people in my position, is to call that out, and also to be the person who is mindful of the presence of people not like me in on social media, and to engage, promote, and participate in a useful and respectful way with other folks. and also to be the guy who, uh, I don't just promote my white friends, or I don't just promote my straight friends. I don't just promote my friends who I've known for 10 years. I try to promote the people I don't know. I try to celebrate the people who, I've just gotten to know. And I'm not perfect about that, but it is the point of it is to, as you say, be the person that you really would have benefited from when you came into the community. And another way I put it is, um, when I'm online, I try to cosplay as a better version of myself. So
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah.
that eventually I become that better person just as a matter of course.
We have a couple. Okay, so yeah, we have a couple questions. Samia, we'll get to yours in a second, but Gayatri asks, what would you argue about with Neil Gaiman if you could?
Well, the thing is that so I know Neil actually. So, I don't think we've ever had an argument. Like I've known him distantly, basically since I went into the community because so many people that I knew him. And then he and I actually personally became friends 2009. Um it's I can't think of anything that I have personally had an exception with him too. But I also want to point out that Neil is a very good example of someone who has considered
Yeah.
who he is going to be online, which is why when you see him on Tumblr or you see him on Blue Sky, all that sort of stuff, it is very extremely rare for him to be snippy or to be witty at the expense of someone else. Neil knows, I think, better than others the fact that because he's Neil Gaiman, and he has been Neil Gaiman for at least 30 years. I know this because when I worked in newspapers, I wrote a story about graphic novels so I could have an excuse to call him and talk to him, right? That was 1993. He's been Neil Gaiman all this time. He understands the power of his position, not only to be not only to be kind, but just even unintentionally, a cruel word could crush people. There are other writers of similar or greater stature to Neil that these days don't have the same understanding and circumspectness
Yeah.
that he has had.
Yeah.
So, if I were to have a fight with Neil Gaiman, none of you would ever know it because we would handle it
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
each other.
So we have a question that I want to get to in a minute, but I want to talk about one other thing before I actually have two other questions,
Sure, sure.
um, but I want to talk about one other thing before we get there. Because sometimes writers, especially newer writers, they feel like their editors are telling them, you have to do X, Y, and Z.
Sure,
You have to be on TikTok. You have to be on, there's this, it's almost like received knowledge that you have to do these things.
sure.
I don't actually think you have to do these things. You don't have to be on TikTok if you're not comfortable on TikTok
Yeah,
because it's not going to help you to be
right.
there if you're not. So I guess the larger way I would phrase that is, what can you control and what can't you control? You can control whether or not you go on Instagram or Blue Sky or um, TikTok. You can control whether you create a newsletter
Yeah,
or have a blog. You can't control how many people will come follow you. You can't
yeah.
control, so you can only control your own behavior. Can you talk really quickly about it? That's like the main takeaway for me after all these years of thinking, like, if I just did this, if I just did that. And then I
Yeah,
thought, you know what? I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I I know how I want to be with other people.
right.
I know
Well,
that I can offer people things that matter to me, that if people will joke and talk to me online, which they do, people I don't know, but
yeah.
they feel safe with me. That
Mhm.
matters to me as an
Sure.
online presence.
Well, and I think you made the point, which is that if you're not comfortable with the dynamic of TikTok, right? Then it doesn't matter if you're like on TikTok or not. It's never going to work for you. There's no, as everybody knows, there's no secret to doing everything. People right now, one of the big things over on Threads, which is one of the new social media sites, is a whole bunch of newer writers talking about, well, this is what you need to do, or this is what you have to do, and this, but
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
speaking as the guy who's been doing this literally for 20 years now, has been published novelist for 20 years now, has been online for 30 years now. There is no one right way to do anything. There's only knowing yourself as well as you can
Yes,
and
yes.
finding those things that and to use the parlance of the kids, find the things you vibe with. I used to vibe with Twitter a whole lot. I now vibe with Blue Sky a whole lot. Do I vibe with Instagram as much? No, I don't, because you always have to post a picture with your post, and I don't always have a picture. Do I vibe with TikTok? Not really, because the amount of time that I would need to spend to like produce
Hmm.
the video that would be at a standard that I would be happy with is higher than the effort that I want to make. I'm fundamentally lazy, which is why text-based stuff works so well for me.
Yes. Oh, I never thought of it like that, but that's
Yes.
absolutely it. Plus, my kids who are in their early 30s, they're not on TikTok. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, TikTok's for the young people,
Well, and the
right?
thing,
So
yeah,
they can't even help me. They're like, oh, well, we don't care. And so
we
I'm
don't
like,
know. We don't
okay,
know
that
about
excuses me. I don't
like,
have to do it.
kids. What are they doing? Well, and
Yeah.
that's the other thing too, is that the thing is that I'm not on TikTok either, in the sense that, it's just not of interest to me, and the dynamic of it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that people won't talk about you on TikTok or all that sort of stuff, but they will go off and do their own thing. But the point of it is that you don't necessarily have to worry about going to addressing the TikTok crowd, right? It's like, I know, generally speaking, who my market is. My market are people 35 and above. And they're the people who are on, um, you know, uh, Blue Sky or Threads
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
Facebook, occasionally on Instagram, who still read blogs because they're stubborn, and do all that sort of stuff. So I'm not necessarily losing out by going to TikTok. Or alternately, if I am, it's more than compensated by those other places that I am comfortable with. And the other thing is that, if you are fortunate enough to have a marketing group, like on tour or all that sort of stuff, part of their job is to do the part of the marketing that you
That's right.
don't. Now, this is a very tricky thing to say, because it's easy for me, the guy who is basically, the when I put out a book, tour promotes the hell out of it because I'm me at this point, to say, oh yeah, well, they'll just cover you. But that's not what I mean. What will happen is that if you are having a relationship with your publicists or PR people, you will find the things that they are willing to commit to do
Yeah.
for your release.
Yeah.
And then you complement that small e with the things that you are doing. And some of those might be on their social media. But yeah, again, don't fret if, for example, TikTok doesn't work for you. If it does work for you, have fun with it.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the thing, to go back to the thing where you're saying, it's like, you're told you have to do this and you have to do this and you have to do this. What they are saying fundamentally, I think ultimately, is you have to participate in the selling of your own book, right? That you can't and shouldn't, and at this point in late capitalism, expect that they are just going to pull the entire load, right? They can't, they won't. Tor Tor loves me just fine, right? But they also have literally 20 other books that they're going to put out in any one month, right? So even if I was like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Like, because we have 20 other people. No one is going to love your book more than you are
Yeah.
going to love your book.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, you know, that you find the way that you can participate in your own publicity and in your own book. Now, some of that, again, as we've talked before, it's not like saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, because that will drive people, they'll drive, ultimately will drive people away, because all they see from you is buy my book. having a natural presence, having the sort of presence that reflects who you are as a person, mediated or not, is going to be more effective in the long term. But ultimately, what they're asking for, and what authors should think about is, given the options that are available to me,
Yeah.
what am I good at? What am I comfortable at? Not always the same things.
Yeah.
What am I willing to do? How much time do I have? And ultimately, what is my goal of doing all of the stuff in the first place? Is it just to sell the book, which is one thing, or is it I'm selling the book, but also I'm just letting people know I'm around and I exist and I'm alive?
And I want to add an addendum to all that. You know, I'm a modest mid-list seller.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have really going for me is that I am still here after
Yeah.
30 years. I
Yeah.
am like still, I have a duology. Oh, it's not been announced yet. But pretend you didn't hear this, but I have
I
a
didn't hear
fantasy
a word.
duology coming out next year that I'm revising right now. And I'm still working on the third of a space opera that'll come out whenever it's done. But I'm still here. So, but let's say you have a newsletter and you have 50 people. That's
Mhm.
50 people.
Mhm.
That's a start. You don't
Yeah.
instantly have to have 20,000 followers on Twitter. You
Yeah.
don't, or however many followers on Blue Sky. You don't have to have a massive TikTok present instantly.
Yeah.
Things build slowly, and it's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a star influencer instantly, even though, because we often see here and here, but we don't see that what happened in between it. And so
The
people judge themselves by that top level and say, oh, I'm never going to get there. Well, maybe you are never going to get there. All you have to do is to just keep being present.
I think that that's absolutely 100%. The metaphor that I use for that is, the longer you stay in the game, the more chances you have to get up to the
Yes.
and hit.
Yes.
And my go-to example of that recently has been Martha Wells, right?
Oh,
Because
absolutely. I
Martha,
adore Martha. And I knew her when she had thought her career was over.
right, right. That's the whole thing is like she came in, I think late 80s, early 90s. She plugged away. She did a whole bunch of really fine work that just for some reason or another didn't hit. She had a midless career. She had her ups and she had her downs. She was at a certain point where she was like, do I chuck it all in?
Yeah.
And then 30 years plus into a career, here comes Murderbot, and then
Bam.
yeah, and
Bam.
and I love that we both did this at the same
We
time.
did. I had at 2019 Dublin Worldcon Wednesday evening. I had dinner with Martha. So this was
Yeah.
2019. Murderbot was published in 2017, I believe, and then the other three
Yep.
came out in 2018, I think.
Yeah.
And we sat down. It's early, it's the beginning of the convention. We sat down. We hadn't seen each other for a little while. We sat down, and I said, Martha, like just like Martha, and she looked. Oh my God, I adore her. She looked at me. She goes, I just can't get my head around it. And I will never forget that.
Yeah.
It was the most darling thing. But John, I want to skip ahead because we do have a question that I think
Okay.
is a big question. So, Gayatri, well, there is a one question about AI, but I don't feel capable of tackling that. But there's another question. So,
Okay.
Gayatri, I apologize. We might check in at the very end on that one.
Yeah.
But okay, Samia, and if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. Can either of you speak about how to build content for a writer just starting out? I bought mypenname.com when I started writing, began hosting a bare bones site on Squarespace when I got an agent. With my book on sub, there's nothing to draw people to my site nor anything to share. What should someone in my position do with her site? Let it linger until something exciting happens? Is there any prep work I should be doing in case my novel sells?
I mean, I think the thing to do with your site is, that it doesn't just have to, again, it doesn't just have to be about your book. I mean, the name of my blog, which I picked in 1998, so it's a very Gen X sort of name, is Whatever, right? And it's not because of whatever, but because it was whatever I wanted to talk about. And so sometimes I didn't publish books until 3 or 4 years after that I got the site. So I wrote about current events, or I wrote about, my dog, or I wrote about how at 1 month old, my daughter was the 5th smartest mammal in the house. All of these things that I just wrote about. And I filled with the content. I put the content up, not because I was expecting millions of people to see it, but because I wanted to talk about it. And there was a place that I had to put stuff up. And that's what I did. So don't be thinking about it don't be thinking about a website or anything just purely in the context of a career. Think of it as an opportunity to be like, I love to take pictures of flowers, then put up the flower pictures. Or I really love talking about HO scale model trains, then talk about that.
Yeah.
Bridgerton just
Yeah.
had a 3rd season. Talk about the 3rd season of Bridgerton. It doesn't have to be about a thing. And again, this is one of the things that I think people are worried about. They're like, am I going to do this right? What is the way to do it?
Yes.
And consistently over the last 3 decades, because I'm old now, the thing that I've seen is there is no one way to do it. There is the way that is fun for you, that gives you joy, or at the very least, is the thing that you feel like the most comfortable doing. So the answer to the question is quite honestly, do with it what you would want to do. If you want to promote the book, and absolutely do it, and you should do that. But if there's something else that you would like to do with it, then do that instead. And ultimately, if it's like, well, I don't actually want to do anything other than that, then just put updates when I have updates, then do that too. And don't apologize for it,
Yeah.
and don't worry about it. Just do the thing that makes
Yeah.
sense for you. What was the AI question? Because I
Okay,
know.
I'm going to ask this because it's a great question,
Okay.
Gayatri. What are your concerns around AI and large language model harvesting of publicly available posts, including your own? I'm batting this to you because I got nothing.
I just assume that it's already happened, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was that database where they're like, see if you've
Yeah.
been scraped. And of course, whatever is absolutely 100% on it. And on a level of, you are using my text for a commercial purpose, you should really have cleared that with me, and also paid me for it, because all of that material is under copyright and is not fair use just to scrape it. That's one thing. So that's one thing. On the other hand, my part of me is like, oh, so the AI is going to sound like me? Oh, that's bad for everyone.
But the other thing is the AI isn't going to sound like you.
No,
I
and
mean,
this is
that's the fundamental lie, right?
this is the thing is that the AI, the AI is not AI. It's a large
Yeah.
language model, and I
Yeah.
think the question reflected that. But the other thing
Yeah.
about it is large language models are built to be predictive, and therefore they always trend towards mediocrity. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way. I mean, like, literally, they're like, what is the next expected word here, or the next expected thing to be said there? And what we are finding, generally speaking, is that, and certainly the people who are running magazines who are being flooded with AI,
Yeah.
large language middle
Yeah.
submissions, finding is that it becomes very quickly apparent the people who are using it and how they're using it, and so on and so forth. Just like, you can always tell when stuff has been photoshopped, or, there are people who can do magnificent photoshops and they can fool you, but the large 95% are not that way. So large language models and AI follow Sturgeon's law, which is the vast majority of it is going to be crap. Now, does this mean over the course of time that this is going to always be the case? No, it's going to incrementally improve as we go along, and it's already much better now than what it has been before. I don't think that people need to. I don't want to. No, this is not the right way to put it. So I don't think people need to worry about it. I think people do need to worry about it, but I do think that people who are convinced that their individual voice will be minimized underestimate the desire by humans to have work by other humans. the variation, the imperfection, the voice that cannot be replicated anywhere else. And this is going to be the same, incidentally, to get back to social media. We see social media right now completely flooded by bots, and you can tell immediately who they are, what they're doing. You don't have any question when you go to the former Twitter or Facebook or something like that, and you see a AI generated or large language model generated post followed by 300 large language model replies. You know what that is, and you know that it's just, and your brain automatically just filters it out, right? As we go along, more and more people will, even the people, even my, even my mother-in-law, will become familiar with the tone and tropes and how AIs work, and they will tweak it because, that's, the point of it. But at the end of the day, the aspect of humanity that cannot be replicated, the fact that we don't trend towards mediocrity, unless if we can avoid it, means that you will still be able to sell your books and your short stories and everything else. The end of the day thing about it is, someone says, if a human didn't write it, why would I want to read it? Right?
It's and actually, to circle back to Samia's question, what to put on my blog, I think the same thing with social media. Be human.
Yes. I just lost you. I can't see you anymore, or I'm not hearing you anymore. There we go. Am I back? Okay, hold on. There you go. See, I can see you, but I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Yes. No, we can't hear Kate. Well,
all right, I'm back.
there we go. There we go. Yay.
I think my house lost power like for 3 seconds because it did at 8 a.m. too.
Oh, okay.
Or our AI overlords decided
Right,
they were
they found us,
irritated by this
the button on
criticism.
I will say this. I personally, and I don't want to minimize anyone else's concerns, but I am personally not worried that I will be run out of town by AI. And I expect that so long as I put out work and people want to read it, that I will be able to continue to do it. Likewise, I expect that on social media and on my online presence, as long as I'm me, the version of me I choose to promote, then there will be people who want to see it. So at the end of the day, what it comes down to really is be human, because that is the advantage you have.
Yes, and I think that's a great place to finish off negotiating the changing terrain of social media in the 21st century. Thank you, John. This went exactly as well as I thought it would. And I want to thank everyone for being here with us today. And for those of you who watch this on SFWA's YouTube channel, thank you for hanging out with us for an entire hour. For those of you doing the writing date today, it's Laura Elena Donnelly. And this is the last episode of season 4. So
I'm the finale.
You are the finale. So it actually worked out that I had an allergic reaction to my surgical Steri-strips, and we had to postpone the other one. So, and we will see you all online.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Again, thank you.